Hello everyone. Today we will talk about the scaphoid bone fracture and its management. First of all, we will look at the scaphoid bone anatomy. This twisted tubular structure having an S shape. This also resembles a boat, and this twisted structure also having appearance similar to a twisted peanut as well. Now this scaphoid also articulates with the rest of the carpals. For that it does have articular cartilage, and this shaded portion over here is the articular cartilage, and this accounts for around 80% area, where the rest 20% area is uncovered and the waste is a part of it. Scaphoid does not have any tendinous attachment on either surface, whereas regarding the ligaments, it does have ligamentous attachment, which are specifically the short intercarpal ligaments, and these short intercarpal ligaments are attached on the dorso-radial surface of the scaphoid. The dorso-radial surface of scaphoid. Regarding the biomechanics of scaphoid, it is important because it will make you understand the various positions in the X-rays to be taken. Scaphoid undergoes flexion and extension movement as well. The flexion movement occurs with the wrist flexion and the radial deviation, and the scaphoid extension occur with the when the wrist moves into extension, and there occur ulnar deviation, the wrist extension occur. Now these movements are responsible because of the gliding movement of the scaphoid, and we will look at the two X-rays in which we will see how does the flexion and extension of the scaphoid will appear on the X-rays, how we can differentiate whether it is in flexion or whether it is in extension. In these two X-rays we can easily identify. Now the most common carpal bone to get fractured is the scaphoid bone. It is because the anatomical location of the scaphoid is very peculiar. It gets the axial load. It gets compressed between the distal end of the radius and the ground. When the person falls on an outstretched hand with the wrist in hyperextension, the scaphoid gets sandwiched and it gets fractured. See, it occurs in the age group of 15 to 40 year. Now, why it is common in the 15 to 40 year age group and that as well male? Because in this age group the lower end radius portion is very strong, and the strong lower end radius and the hard ground between the two hard structure, the scaphoid bone get sandwiched and it will get fractured. Here in this image we can see the scaphoid bone fracture, which is occurring when a person falls on a hyperdorsiflexion and pronated hand. So basically fall on a outside hand with the hyperdorsiflexion of the wrist. The fracture occurs. Now let's look at the blood supply. Very important. Radial artery is the main blood supply, which gives rise to two vascular pedicles. One is the dorsal pedicle, one is the volar pedicle. The volar pedicle makes its entry through the scaphoid tubercle, whereas the dorsal runs along the ridge. Now look at the proximal pole and the distal pole of the scaphoid mentioned in the image. Now, how does the radial artery supply the scaphoid? Actually, it's a retrograde flow. It moves from the proximal side to the distal side normally as it runs, but from the distal pole it enters into the scaphoid bone. So it's a retrograde flow, which is a very peculiar thing. Here in this image we can also see the retrograde flow into the scaphoid bone. Now, in the scaphoid fracture cases, there is a high risk of non-union and the osteonecrosis. This is because one is the regeneration capacity is very less because the only 80% area is covered by the articular cartilage, whereas the waist, which is the most common site of fracture, there is no any articular cartilage or there is no periosteal healing is there. Second thought here is the retrograde vascular supply, which is responsible for the non-union and the osteonecrosis of the. Next, we will talk about the clinical scenarios. Generally, the patient presented is a male with the anatomical snuff-hook tenderness who are involved in a sports injury, who are involved in some kind of sports. So they got injured there and they will present to us within 72 hours. Such cases, these four cases are present, these four condition is present, then it should raise a high index of suspicion in your mind. Then immediately order an X-ray, and if the X-ray is normal, if there is a high index of suspicion, then it could be occult fracture. And for the occult fracture, MRI is the best investigation of choice, which can detect even within the 24 hours. These patients should not send home without any casting. For 10 to 14 days, casting should be done. They should be re-evaluated after the 14 days, and because 7% of them actually have some kind of fracture, we will see on further reviews. If the patient does not have any anatomical snuff box tenderness, he just comes to us with the pain around the wrist, then the index of suspicion will come down to 0, means patient does not have any kind of scaphoid fracture. Next, we'll talk about the X-rays. Very, very, very important in case of scaphoid. Generally, we order two views, PI view and lateral view. But here, we order the 4 standard radiographs plus some additional views. And even after these so many X-rays, there are still 37% chances of missing the scaphoid fractures. The X-ray we order are basically the 4 standard radiographs, include the neutral PA view, the lateral view, the 45-degree oblique view, and the ulnar deviation view. Now, why the PA view is not enough? It is because the anatomy of the scaphoid is such that the tubercle of the scaphoid actually overhang on the flexor surface, or we can say on the volar surface. If we see, tubercle is normally overhanging, and because of that, it casts a shadow. So we cannot visualize the whole scaphoid. And the second thing we can understand over here is that the scaphoid, it normally oriented at a 45-degree flexion with the long axis of the radius. So this much portion also cast a shadow, and because of that, scaphoid we cannot easily view on the PA view. So what we needed? We needed the extra views, the ulnar deviation views. By doing the ulnar deviation, we can see the proximal pole easily. And if we go for the 45-degree ulnar oblique view, we can see the semi-pronated view. In that case, we can see the tubercle fracture easily. And we have another Zitter's view or the bananas view. These are specifically for the waist fracture. We have another view, specific scaphoid view, which is done how it is done, 30-degree extension, and there is deviation, ulnar deviation approximately 20-degree. We can see the scaphoid waist fracture easily by means of, but still, even after doing so many views, the wrist fracture chances missing is still there, and it accounts to 37%. Now look at some fractures appearances of the scaphoid. This is the tubercle fracture. In the second image, this is the distal pole fracture. How does the fracture looks on the X-ray? Here we can see the vertical fracture of the scaphoid, and in the last image we can see the proximal pole fracture. These are just common fracture patterns. See, in some conditions, CT scan is needed. The X-rays are not enough, because on X-ray we can miss the fracture, we can miss that how much displacement is there. So to know the displacement, CT scan is needed, because displacement is associated with the non-union risk as well. Like if there is more than 1 mm displacement is there, the non-union risk will increase. And on X-ray we cannot see the cortical break, so CT scan is needed there. And how much comminution is there, we can also get to know on the CT scan. And in case of translation, there how much is the gap, angulation, rotation, for the CT scan is needed. So CT scan is a very important investigation in case of scaphoid. See, regarding the displacement, we already discussed, if we miss the displacement amount, the risk of non-union will be increased. There will be high risk of non-union. So it is necessary to know the how much displacement is there. So we cannot rely totally on the X-ray in case of scaphoid fractures. So next we'll talk about the classification. We have Rusk classification, we have Mayo, we have AO. Here we will talk about the Herbert classification. See, there are 4 types and various subtypes are also there. First of all, type A, that's a stable acute fracture, which includes the tubercle fracture plus incomplete waist fracture. Tubercle fracture A1, incomplete waist fracture A2. Say B is the unstable acute fracture, which include the fracture of the distal pole, complete waist, and the proximal pole fracture. And the type C, it is the delayed union. And type D, it's the non-union. And they also have respective parts. We can see in the image, see these are the A, B, C, D types. Look at the D types. Now let's talk about the treatment. First of all, we will talk about the conservative treatment of these scaphoid fracture. We have already diagnosed these with the X-ray and CT. Now, the majority of the fracture here are stable. So they should be immobilized with cast. Now, which cast is given? A high cast or low cast? That is a controversy. And but cast is given. And if there's X-ray is normal, high index of suspicion, we already discussed, we have to immobilize, we have to review the patient after the 10 to 14 days because of the 7% risk of the fractures being occult, which we can find in the follow-up. Now, regarding the displacement, if the displacement of the fracture is less than 1 mm, then the union rates are almost equal to 90%. And if the displacement kept on increasing, the union rate will keep on decreasing. Now, regarding the casting should be thumb free or it should involve thumb. That was a controversy before, but now the thumb free is preferred over the other one. Now, regarding the how much duration casting should be done, the distal pole, they have a high vascular supply, so they can be healed in 4 weeks. So casting for 4 weeks is enough. Whereas for the waist, it is 6 to 8 weeks are enough. Like for the proximal pole, it actually ranges from the 6 week to 14 week. And from the 6th week, the CT scan is done to know the union status. And when the union is there, like up to 14 week, it is there. But when the union is there, we can remove the cast. Next, we will talk about the operative management. In case of unstable fractures, unstable conditions like proximal pole fracture and where there is more than 1 mm displacement is there, in such cases we can go for the operative management by means of percutaneous fixation. So percutaneous fixation, look at the image. Here we can see the Herbert screw in the scaphoid. This was performed by the percutaneous fixation, and the 2 screw are to be inserted or 1 screw, that is still a controversy. The percutaneous fixation, there are 2 approaches are available: dorsal and volar approach. Dorsal for proximal pole and the volar for waist and the distal pole. Second option in the operative, we have the ORIF, open induction internal fixation, where we can do the screwing as well, plus we can go for the plate as well. The indication are specific. Now, if there's a significant displacement like more than 2 mm, and if there's a radial unit angle more than 15 degree, which you can see in the image, and the intrascaphoid angle, if it is more than 35 degree, and the fracture is comminuted, with less chances of union is there. That's why the ORIF is done. And the unstable vertical or oblique fractures, plus if scaphoid have a humpback deformity, which occur in case of incomplete fractures of the incomplete waist fracture of the scaphoid. Look at the image. Now, what we do in our management, in our hospital, see, if the patient comes with the scaphoid fracture and he is an athlete, for the distal pole, we go for the casting. For the waist fracture, we have the option of casting versus surgery. Early surgery and the long-term outcomes are like 2 yearly outcomes are similar in the cast and the early surgery in case of waist. And for the proximal pole, it is open reduction and internal fixation. Plus, one thing that this athlete should not go and participate in any kind of activities, sports activities. Next, we will talk about the complications. One is the osteonecrosis, seen in the 13 to 50% cases, malunion, and the hardware impingement, which will lead to arthrosis, and the non-union, which is seen in 5 to 10% cases, and the non-union is treated by the grafting